Okay, and I'm back again for another Spice and Wolf volume review. This time we're continuing on where we left off in volume 6 because Side Colors was, of course, a compilation of side stories. Now let's get into this summary of the volume first. Now, the way this volume starts off is kind of crazy. When we last left off in volume 6, Holo transformed into her wolf form and took both Lawrence and Cole on her back to try and get the jump on Eve and get in front of her after she caused that accident at the river. And they do manage to get the jump on her. And Lawrence also says that she was very surprised, of course, because how would they get in front of her and beat her to Karub? You know, she actually takes it pretty well. She thinks it might be a horse, but there's no way it could have been. And that was the prologue. It was like 2 pages, right? Yeah, 2 pages of this small prologue. It surprised me when I first read it, but they are after Eve for a different reason, not being revenge. Well, Lawrence isn't. Polo is definitely still angry. She actually gets pretty angry at Eve. I think they tell us a little later on that Polo tries to fight her. But chapter 1 starts off with them at an inn in Karub after Lawrence has already spoken to Eve. And Holo is in bed because she ran so much and she has quite a bit of muscle pain. And I highlighted why they wanted to speak to Eve, that being because of the ancient remains of a wolf, we're assuming. And Eve knows a lot about the Rome River, so and that's why they chased after Eve. And throughout this volume, we see that Eve is a little envious of Lawrence and his relationship with Holo. And she knows that Holo's anger towards her is irrational, like it says right here. It says quite a bit about Eve's character. So after Lawrence and Holo are almost done speaking, Cole comes back after making a type of salve that would help with Holo's muscle pain. He also gives some to Lawrence because of the bruise he got from Eve in Lenos. And it works pretty well. Now we move on to when Lawrence talked to Eve last night, when they surprised her. Cole also tags along, which I like quite a bit. He gets to see this whole conversation between Lawrence and Eve. And Eve knows exactly why they've pursued her, like she says here. I also highlighted this why or what Lawrence loves about merchants and the games they play. So they talk a little bit about Lawrence and Holo's relationship. Then they get to talking about the story of the ancient bone. I also highlighted this line too. This also says a lot about Lawrence valuing Holo over his own life. So then Eve gives a letter of greeting or like recognition, so Lawrence can go and talk to someone who might know about the remains. And so after that, Lawrence and Cole leave, and Cole seems to have gotten the wrong idea about Lawrence and Eve's relationship. And this comes up later when they get back to the inn. And Lawrence also knows that he's gotten this wrong idea. Oh, here's a line exactly. He thinks that I have an affair with Eve, thinking Lawrence was in the wrong. This is where it is, okay. This little part at the end goes on for a little bit before they go outside and go to the market. Well, actually, they go to the Gene Company before then. The Gene Company being the place Eve referred Lawrence to about the remains. The man there, I forgot his name, but he talks with Lawrence about how the church views the remains and how they want to get their hands on them so they can have that over the pagans. Oh, Reynolds, that's his name, okay. The Gene Company oversees a lot of what happens at the bottom of the Rome River. We must meet whatever comes down the river. They have a little bit of banter, the three of them, and Reynolds treats all of them to a pretty extravagant feast, including some chicken. They say Lawrence and Company, huh? Maybe I should start doing that, huh? So after they're done speaking with Reynolds, they actually go out into town. But before they're really able to do anything, Eve shows up. Eve walks up to Lawrence, saying that if he's interested in what's going on in town, come to the Spring of Gold. Polo gets a little annoyed at this and they split up. And Cole decides to, or Lawrence kind of pushes Cole to go with Holo. He gives him a silver coin so that they can eat. Now she kind of does this on purpose, as this line implies, because Holo doesn't really want to tie Lawrence down, and Lawrence accepts this. So Lawrence meets up with Eve. Eve tells Lawrence about the situation of the town between the north and the south. Eve saying that she's trusted with the undertable dealings. They also drink a little bit. So after Lawrence and Eve are done talking, Lawrence tries to find Holo and Cole. Holo actually sits on the windowsill of the building they decided to eat at, with both her tail and ears exposed, saying she was either drunk or confident. Pretty daring of her. Cole was out for a bit and he returns after Lawrence and Holo talk a little bit. Lawrence tells both Holo and Cole of what he heard, how the north side is borrowing money to build the marketplace and that they want to pay that off. He also talks about how Eve was somewhat controlling them, readying a letter for Lawrence so quickly. Lawrence even says she's a cunning wolf. And Lawrence then decides to come up with a plan. Then chapter 3 starts and Cole's role is to be a beggar and learn a lot about the town from all the other beggars. And Holo's role is to go to the church of the town and see what she can learn there, specifically about the remains too. Lawrence kinda wants to go with Holo. He says that it's not fine for her to go alone, but Cole to go alone, asking that to Lawrence. Holo tells Lawrence that if he wants to have a shop one day, he has to learn about using others. So Lawrence goes to his trading guild, there being one in this town of Karug, and he meets the master of this one, Keeman. He is indeed a very scary person. He even looks devious here. They speak and Lawrence, I believe, brings up Eve, or Keeman does, and Keeman kind of wants to use Lawrence's connection with Eve to do something about the town, the somewhat conflict between the north and the south. Keeman finds this out because Lawrence tells him of this rumor he's heard. Lawrence tells Keeman about his dealings with Eve. He also tells Lawrence to not do business with Eve in this town, but he's fine with him seeking advice for her regarding the wolf remains. Keeman also expects Lawrence to put the guild before himself. He also ends this conversation off with telling Lawrence that if he speaks with this to anyone else, he'll surely regret it. Then after this conversation takes place, the guild house starts to go in an uproar. Holo also appears at the guild, saying that she can't leave Lawrence alone. Lawrence thinking that's his line. This all happening because of one of the trading companies in the south taking a northern side's fishing vessel. Lawrence thinks it might have been a mermaid that one of the vessels might have found. Surprisingly, Holo doesn't know what a mermaid is. He tells her of what they are. Holo and Lawrence then return to the inn with Cole, seemingly exhausted from smiling all day, to try and get the sympathy of others. Holo seems to be pretty nice to Cole too. She always has been since she's met him anyway. They then have 2 ways to go at this point, and the 3 of them start to talk about what they might need to do. Holo brings up seducing Eve. He also teases Lawrence quite a bit here. Lawrence also notes that Holo seems worried about the bones. They then get Cole's side, and we go back to what Cole learned about the Gene Company and how they were transporting coins in crates, and they didn't add up when moving from place to place. And Cole figures out that they pack the coins in different ways, and they're able to cut down on taxes because it would be fewer crates. Lawrence kind of shoots this down, saying that this can't be a weapon they can use, saying that the difference in the penalty and the profit of the wolf bones was too much, and it would only be fine if they were chasing the wolf tail for fun, but they aren't doing that. But then their conversation gets interrupted by the innkeeper receiving a letter from Eve telling Lawrence to come to a certain place to meet up with her. They meet up and Eve asks Lawrence about what's happened because she was out at the time when the town was kind of in an uproar. She also talks about Keeman to Lawrence and how he's burned her several times over. Eve brings up dropping the guild and trying to get him to work for her. But if Lawrence did that, he would be basically dead as a merchant, or like choosing bankruptcy. He also talks about this bruise she got from one of the landowners and how they were working together, and Eve feels the need to betray him. Lawrence seeing these as terrifying words. She also knows that Heman is trying to use her, and he wants to use Eve to deceive that landowner because he knows that he's in love with Eve. This is the scar I'm talking about. The lighting is done well here too. Eve also tells Lawrence about his special position in this town, being that he has connections to Eve and is a member of the Rowan Trading Guild. Eve ends off the conversation with saying that she can get Lawrence closer to the stories of the Wolf Bones. And it also ends the same way the conversation with Keeman ended, saying that he'll regret it. The guard also says, "Tell no one." And you can tell by the way Lawrence is thinking that he is very lost in contemplation, saying that he's a small fish in all of this. He then heads back to the inn, and he gets a letter from the Rowan Trading Guild. Now he knows that Keeman is very serious, and that's where the volume ends. Also, in the afterword, Hasakura talks about how much he wrote for this whole arc and how long it might be, saying that Lawrence is going to be pretty cool in the next volume, which I know to be true. I kind of also want to talk about the differences between the light novel and the manga, that being the context being switched. In the manga, they replace the wolf remains or the tale of them with a book maybe about Yoitz, and it doesn't change too much really. There's a lot of other stuff too, but it kind of gets the same point across. I like that in the manga that the conversation between Lawrence and Eve while he was out in town takes place on a boat. I like that change, but talking about this volume as a whole, it is a pretty good start to this arc, and I know how much better it gets in the second part, volume 9, Town of Strife 2. It is easily my favorite part of Spice and Wolf, and I can't wait to read it because it was pretty good in the manga, and I expect it to be even better here in the light novel. But as always, thanks for watching, and tune in next time to see the review of Town of Strife 2 Volume 9.